You know, what if I told you that there is a text, a 2,500-year-old text, that isn't about faith or religion, but is actually a shockingly precise, almost clinical map of our own minds? Well, today we're going to decode an ancient analysis of the one cognitive habit that just might be the root of all our mental patterns. So let's just dive right in with the big question. I want you to forget about what happened to you yesterday, or even 10 years ago, just for a second. This ancient map of the mind, it poses a pretty radical idea. What if the real source of our stress, our anxiety, our distress isn't some external event, but a deeply ingrained moment-to-moment mental habit? A habit we don't even know we have. The source for this whole deep dive is a text called the Mūlapariyāyasutta. And really, the name itself is a huge giveaway. Mula means root, the deep hidden source of something. And pariyaya means a pattern, a structure, a sequence. So right away, you see this isn't about belief. It's a discourse on the root pattern of all things. It's basically a psychological breakdown of the very mechanics of how our minds work. Now, to understand this root pattern, the text first asks us to look at our default cognitive state. And here's a great way to think about it. Imagine your mind is a painter that is constantly and totally unconsciously adding layers to the world you see. Let's see how it works. Okay, so the analysis starts with what it calls the common person. And look, this isn't a judgment, not at all. It's really just a technical description of the universal, untrained state of the human mind. This is basically how our minds operate right out of the box, before we do any conscious work on them. So it all starts with something super simple, super neutral: perception. The mind just encounters something in reality. The text uses these really basic elements: earth, fire, and in this case, water. So your mind perceives water. That's it. Just a clean, direct experience. But it doesn't stay that way for long. Instantly, this cognitive process called manjati kicks in, and you can think of it literally as to paint over reality. The mind takes that totally neutral perception of water and immediately, and I mean immediately, starts painting layers of self-reference all over it. It's no longer just water. It's the water I need, my thirst. That water's mine. See? It mixes the self right into the object. And right on the heels of that mental painting, boom, the second step, abhinandati. This is the emotional reaction. It means to get thrilled, to delight in, to grab onto the very thing you just painted. So you don't just see your water, you feel this rush of desire or possession for it. You essentially fall in love with your own painting. So here's the crucial part. It's this lightning-fast, totally unconscious cognitive loop. You perceive something neutral, water. You immediately paint it with self-reference. That's manjati, making it my water. And then you get a little thrill from that creation and you grab onto it emotionally. That's abhinandati. And this happens all day long with almost every single perception we have. And just to show you how deep this habit runs, the text points out that we do this with everything, even with the concept of peace itself. A person might actually find a state of mental calm, nibbana. And then that old habit just kicks right back in. The mind paints my peace, and then it gets thrilled, grabbing onto it, which, of course, completely ruins the very peace it was trying to possess. Okay, but if that automatic loop is our default setting, can it be changed? Is there a way out? Well, the text says yes. And that brings us to our second stage, the conscious work of a trainee who decides to step in and intervene. So this next figure is the sekha, or the trainee. This is someone who has actually become aware of that cognitive loop, that painting and grabbing thing we just talked about, and now they're actively working to short-circuit it. They've seen the pattern, and they're finally starting to do something about it. So what's their tool? It's a direct internal command, ma manya. It literally means don't paint. So as the perception arises, and just as that automatic urge to project me and mine all over it begins, the trainee consciously catches it and issues this command to stop the process cold. It's like a mental emergency brake. So let's just look at this side by side. It makes it super clear. The common person on the left is just running on autopilot, unconsciously painting and grabbing reality all day. But the trainee on the right, they're actively engaged. They're applying a conscious brake, using that command, ma mini, to stop the painting before it even leads to the grabbing. It's a huge shift from being a victim of the habit to becoming an active trainer of your own mind. So what happens when that training is complete? What does it look like when stopping the habit is no longer a struggle, but it's just a new natural way of being? Well, that brings us to the final stage,
the mind of the expert.
The text calls this person the Arahant, or the expert. This is someone who has practiced so diligently for so long that the old habit of painting has been completely and utterly replaced. They have, as the text puts it, finished the job.
For the expert, the cognitive process is now namanyati, and it simply means does not paint. Now, notice the shift there. It's not a command anymore, like ma mani was for the trainee. It's just a statement of fact. For this person, seeing reality clearly without that overlay of I or mine has become the new, effortless default. The paintbrush has been put down for good.
So, this gives us this incredibly clear progression. Stage 1, the common person automatically paints reality and is totally unaware of the distortion. Stage 2, the trainee becomes aware and actively commands themselves, don't paint. And then stage 3, the expert simply does not paint. It's a whole journey, really, from unconscious distortion to conscious effort, and finally to effortless clarity.
But this whole analysis, it kind of begs a giant question, right? Why? Why is this seemingly tiny cognitive habit of painting and grabbing considered so important, so fundamental? Well, the text saves its most profound and, frankly, its most shocking diagnosis for the very end.
So let's just ask it directly. Why does this ancient psychological model claim that this one specific habit, this tendency to paint our experiences and then grab them, is the absolute fundamental root of all our suffering?
And here it is, the answer, straight from the source. The reason the expert mind no longer paints or grabs is devastatingly simple. Because he realized that getting thrilled and grabbing is the root of suffering. The text isolates this one specific moment, that little spark of emotional excitement, as the seed of all our pain.
So it all comes down to this one word, nandi. It's that thrill, that little buzz of excitement you get when you grab onto something as mine, my idea, my success, my relationship, my peace of mind. According to this 2,500-year-old diagnosis, that initial thrill, not the loss later on, not the disappointment, but the initial grab, that is the source code of your pain.
And then, after laying out this entire cognitive map, this whole argument, the text delivers its conclusion with incredible weight. It simply states, this is what the Blessed One said.
So what was the reaction? Did the audience celebrate this incredible insight? No. The text ends with one of the most powerful, honest lines in all of ancient literature. But those seekers did not rejoice at his words. They were stunned into silence. The diagnosis was just so radical, so deep. To suggest that the very thrill they were all chasing was the real source of their pain, they just couldn't immediately accept it. And really, the silence of that first audience, that's the challenge the text leaves for us. It turns this whole analysis from some ancient theory into a deeply personal practice. It leaves all of us with one final, implicit question. What happens, even for just a moment, when you just see the world without painting?